lovely people, welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be making an 18th century-ish shift. At least that's the general idea. The plan was to go with this pattern, the Simplicity 8162. I've seen this around a fair bit. So I got down on the floor, cut out all the pattern pieces, as you do, and then promptly didn't like the way it looked and the way it sort of felt, and with the facing and with the no. So I decided to go rogue and went with the approach that Morgan Donna has a video of on her channel. I will link that below. So yeah, let's go. For this approach we have a rectangle as base. It's all geometric shapes, nothing fancy, no curves, no nothing. Rectangle as base, two more rectangles as sleeves, left and right, obviously. And the gore pieces on the sides, two rectangles. And what I promptly completely forget to draw in here, the gusset pieces under the arms. What I'm going to draw in here though is like I'm going to Frankenstein in the neckline from the original pattern, because I do kind of like the neckline, and it's sort of like a rough estimate of where I want to go with that. I'm also sort of like just going to point out that I'm putting the gauze in quite high, like around the waist, because I just like it to be a bit squishy. Yeah, the waist, as you can see. Right, so now I'm cutting out the fabric, and while I'm cutting out the fabric I'm going to tell you that I took my measurements like across the shoulders, around the chest, elbows, upper arms. Elbows and upper arms you want to do like under, like when you've got the arm bent, because it does add a few centimeters to the measurement. But rest assured I completely and utterly ignored the fact that I took my chest measurement. And also did my little trick in adding barely enough seam allowance to get me through the whole thing. I really need to get a handle on that. Both of those things, the chest measurement and the seam allowance, are going to come back to bite me later in the process. Right, so here we've got the one gusset piece, attaching both gussets on either side of the short end of the sleeves, and the gore pieces on either end of the short side of the main body piece. And because I'm going to be figuring out the neckline in a moment, and because I was listening to a really good podcast, I am going to give you the opportunity to get some neckline figuring outing ASMR stuff. Enjoy.
Mid-October 1793 is also when word of general emancipation hits, and everyone becomes really super convinced that this is all a Girondin plot to help destroy the Republic. But then in December, everything suddenly flipped upside down when two pieces of news were revealed almost simultaneously. First, correspondence between the renegade Big Whites and the British government about handing the colony over were published. Suddenly, everyone knew that since at least February, the white colonial interests had been actively in league with the enemies of the Republic. And then the second bit of news was the incontrovertible proof of this treasonous alliance. News that Jeremy and Mole Saint-Nicolas had opened their harbors to the British. Suddenly, the Second Commission and their emergency emancipation order looked like a truly patriotic response to white colonial treason. So the verdict that Sonthonax and Polverel were enemies of the Republic was suddenly being reconsidered. But as I said, colonial policy is very much now being viewed through the lens of the really super dangerous world of Paris politics during the Reign of Terror. For complicated reasons, the white colonial lobbyists had wound up attached most especially to the ultras in all of this, and particularly had allies in the Committee of General Security. So it was by order of the Committee of General Security that Julien Raymond had been arrested, and when the Tricolor Commission arrived in Paris at the end of January 1794...
Okay, that done. I'm just really quickly going to sew together the shoulder seams. So I've got both parts of the body attached to each other. Doing that with a back stitch for a little bit of added strength. Just between like the side seam and where the marking for the neckline, where the neckline is going to be. Okay, so from here on out I went ahead and pressed open said shoulder seam, and I'm now going to attach the sleeves right sides together. So I have the seam on the inside. The sleeve I also went ahead and pressed lengthwise in half, so I've got a nice crisp line that I can line up with can line up the side seams together and can also line up the middle line with the shoulder seam. So I wasn't messing around with notches or anything, I just sort of pressed the line, which was easy enough. I mean, it's a nice thing to start off with. It's all geometric, straight shapes, no curves, no frills, no weird stuff to get lost in. Let's take care to line it up like really nicely, and again promptly not leave a reasonable seam allowance. And here I'm just now stitching in, like you can see again, like it's a minuscule seam allowance. I really need to pull myself together on that. I'm using a back stitch again. I really like the back stitches. And here I'm taking care not to sew down the little seam allowance where the gusset meets the sleeve, just so I can tidy that away nicely later on in the process and neaten it up properly. Right, now before continuing with the main process or the full process of the construction, I'm here just basting everything together, which is, yeah, for a fitting. I did, as you can see, amend the neckline because the actual neckline that I took off of the pattern was like vastly too low, like across my boobs. I cut that out off camera and of course made the exact same mistake again, that I left 0 seam allowance. See how that works out later. I'm just actually finishing the neckline here, sort of just to have it finished. And what I'm doing is a rolled seam. A rolled seam. This rolled seam is really nice. I was super scared of doing a rolled seam because I was like, oh my god, it's going to be so hard, it's going to be so complicated and so fiddly. And because of the linen and the way linen is and works, it's actually really nice. Like, it was pretty easy. Like, you just kind of like have to have, I guess if you have like a hand cream or something that doesn't immediately go into the skin, it does help. But this was so nice and so pleasant and pleasing and soothing and so much fun to just do this rolled hem and then roll it down and fell it with tiny felling stitches. It was just so nice. Trying to use a thimble here. Thimbles are hard, and I'm probably not using them correctly, but I try. Oh yeah, this happened frequently. This always happens frequently. It's just like the first top layer of skin. I think if you've ever sewed anything by hand, you probably know what this is. It looks a lot more gross than it actually is. Now, this part is a big maybe. What I'm doing here is sewing in the gathering thread for a sleeve ruffle. I'm only doing this on one side, and even now when this video is being released, I'm still not decided on whether or not I'm actually going to do it on the other side as well, or whether I'm going to set it in properly, or just bear with me on this one. I haven't decided on this yet. And yeah, the actual gathering itself. I like the idea of the ruffled sleeve. I think it looks really cute. But then again, I'm not entirely certain how practical it really is in regards to wearing a variety of garments over top. Like if you've got a short sleeve thing where the ruffle just pokes out at the edge of the seam or at the cuff, it's probably going to look quite nice. But if you've got like a long sleeve garment, this is going to be really annoying and in the way and just bulky under the upper arm sleeve. So I'm still not decided on this. And finally, I am actually hemming the chemise. The hem was actually the thing that was the most straightforward because it was literally the straightest part of the garment. I actually, kudos to myself. It's not so much that I left the seam allowance, but I actually cut the seam really straight. And here's just some more felling off camera because reasons. I struggle with that. Don't ask me why I'm doing it away from the body. Oh yes, there we are. There she is. There we. I like this chemise. I actually, like you see, managed to promptly set in the ruffle the wrong way around. And here we are with the lack of seam allowance for the neckline. Don't ask me what I did on the side there. Really, don't ask me what I did there. I've already taken that out again. Just pretend like it doesn't. Ignore it. It's nothing. It's not supposed to be there. It's not in the. It's not anywhere. So yeah, that was my first attempt at a shift chemise set thing, undergarment. I obviously made a ton of mistakes, as you do, when you've never done something before, but it's still wearable, it still works as a chemise or shift or whatever you want to call it. So it's still a success, it's a learning curve, and I'm definitely going to do it again. I hope you enjoyed my inept little ramblings, as usual. If you did, feel free to squeeze the like button below. If you want to see more of what I get up to in general, feel free to subscribe. That would be great. I love subscribers. If you have any questions, feel free to tag them below or put them below, I guess. So yeah, that was my 2 cents on chemises, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.